Here's two ordinary men who have never invested before. Over 5 years, they became millionaires through real estate by using leverage at one point or another. One of these men lost over $1 million because they forgot to consider one crucial factor. Stay until the very end to see how they became millionaires and how you can avoid this costly mistake. This is George, and he's 20 years old, and this is Mark, and he's 45 years old. Both have never invested, but are both eager to begin investing in real estate. They both have $100,000 saved in their bank accounts. George inherited most of the money in his savings. He also has a $50,000 salary. Meanwhile, Mark has saved up his money thanks to his $100,000 salary. During the time Mark wasn't investing, he became completely debt-free after recently paying off the mortgage of his primary residence. In his downtime, George loves thrill-seeking activities, so he's kind of prone to taking on a few risks. Mark is the polar opposite. He's a family man who is seeking escape from the instability of long-term debt so that his family can return to greater financial security. Over the next 5 years, let's see how they became millionaires. In year 1, George knew the more houses he could leverage, the higher his cash flow will be. With logic, it will result in higher profits for him. Quick definition time. Cash flow is the money coming in and coming out of the business. Now, let's get back to the story. Mark knew the more ownership he'd have over each house, the lower his mortgages would be for the rentals. With the logic, it will result in higher profits. George used his $100,000 savings to purchase 5 rental properties with a small down payment on each rental. The market was booming and it was the perfect time for George to be purchasing rental properties. Each rental was worth $200,000. He put $20,000 or 10% on each property. The banks were hesitant to lend that kind of money to George, even though his expected rental income would cover the repayments. However, they were persuaded in the end when he used his primary residence as collateral, meaning that if George's plans were to fail, the banks would have a safety net. Meanwhile, Mark purchased one rental property. He put $100,000 down on a property valued at $200,000. Despite Mark not using his primary residence as collateral, the banks were happy enough to lend to Mark. This was because Mark's situation wasn't considered risky to the bank. Due to the hefty down payment, Mark has no other debts, his high income, and the good market conditions. At the end of year 1, George had 5 rental properties. They were producing him a net profit of $1,000 per month, with a net worth of $900,000, including his primary residence. Mark had 1 rental property, producing him a net profit of $500 per month, with a net worth of $500,000, including his primary residence. In the beginning of year 2, using the profits of the rentals plus the savings from his income, George purchased a further 5 rental properties. He put 10% down on each property. The banks were willing to lend considering the economy was still booming, and George continued to show a healthy cash flow. In simpler terms, George was making consistent profits while paying down the mortgage. Mark was able to purchase a second rental property by putting 50% down, using the net profits of his other rental and the savings from his income. The banks again were willing to lend to Mark as he, like George, produced a healthy cash flow. At the end of year 2, George had a total of 10 rental properties. They were producing him a net profit of $2,000 per month, with a total net worth of over $2 million. On the flip side, Mark had a total of 2 rental properties. They were producing him a net profit of $1,000 with a total net worth of over $700,000. In year 3, the real estate market was starting to slow. George asked the bank to lend him the money to purchase a further 5 rental properties. The bank turned down his application as they wanted to dial back their risk of lending to George. George instead applied for 3 rental properties with a higher down payment. The bank accepted his application, leaving him a bit confused, considering he was projecting higher net profits than he had the year before. With these 3 properties, George put 15% down rather than his typical 10%. While Mark purchased a further 2 rental properties, this time with 75% down on both, using his net profits, savings from his income, and the big bonus from his work. The bank approved Mark's application. At the end of year 3, George had a total of 13 rental properties. They were producing him a net profit of $3,000 per month, with a total net worth of $3 million. whereas Mark had a total of 4 rental properties. They were producing him a net profit of $2,500 per month, with a total net worth of $1.2 million. In review so far, mathematically on paper, it seems that George's method of investing in real estate is better than Mark's approach, as George has a bigger net worth, achieved millionaire status much sooner, and has higher net profits than Mark. On paper, George is superior, but that doesn't resemble reality, does it? Investors tend to overlook one key metric when calculating the return for their investments, and that is risk. Let's take a look at how George misuses risk when the market changes. In year 4, inflation is out of control and a recession hits. In response, the Fed increases interest rates. Ignorantly, George heads to the bank as he wants to purchase a further 5 rental properties. The bank denies him. He settles for free again. The bank denies him a second time. The bank advises George to reduce his risk, due to the amount of leverage he has. In contrast, Mark doesn't buy any more rental properties this year, and decides to strengthen his emergency fund. As unemployment increases, evictions increase. Both George and Mark struggle to find renters. With vacancies increasing, George struggles to keep up with the mortgage repayments and eventually misses payments. The banks are forced to foreclose on all of George's rental properties, including his primary residence, to pay off all his debts. As George hasn't owned his rentals very long, he struggled to put enough equity to stay afloat with all of his debts, forcing him into bankruptcy. Mark, on the other hand, temporarily lowered his rental charge to get tenants in, which ate into his profits. Mark's emergency fund also helped him keep up with the mortgage repayments whenever there was vacancies. If you're enjoying this video so far, make sure to subscribe to Millionaire Bites. At the end of year 4, George is bankrupt, which means he has a net profit and a net worth of $0, while Mark still has 4 rental properties with net profits of over $2,000 per month. While Mark still has 4 rental properties with net profits of $2,000 due to the decreased rental charge for his tenants, this figure is projected to increase back up to $2,500 per month once the recession begins to cool off. Mark has a total net worth of over $1 million. In year 5, the economy is coming out and recovering from the recession. George has moved back in with his parents, while he saves up using his income for a new primary residence. After struggling with years of debt and financial instability in the past, the last thing Mark wanted was to experience a recession while owning multiple pieces of real estate with leverage. Mark's solution to becoming more stable is to purchase properties outright from now on, as a cash buyer. Mark buys a further rental property on discount as prices fell 10% because of the recession. He also plans to pay off the mortgages for his other 4 rental properties in the coming year to reduce the risk further. Mark intends to continue investing in real estate with little as to no risk as possible. At the end of year 5, George has no rental properties, with a total net worth of $15,000. Meanwhile, Mark has 5 fully paid off rental properties, with a total net profit of $3,500 per month, and a total net worth of over $2 million. From watching these 2 journeys unfold, both used leverage to reach millionaire status at one point or another. But the key takeaway is that one of them considered the risk factor, while the other one didn't, which resulted in their journeys concluding in different places. If learning tips from a man with a $100 million real estate portfolio appeals to you, then be sure to check out Robert Kiyosaki in our next video.